Okay, welcome back. This is session number 3, and this is where Chief Lewis would have been, but we do have Laura Debbingham, and she's back. She is a licensed social worker, and she's also an instructor, Great Basin College, and she's the one who makes sure that we have these superhero social workers all across Nevada, and obviously go to other states as well after they get all this talent.
Yes, and Tom, I'm glad you brought that up because can I tell you the story of the social work program?
Sure.
Our college president, Joyce Hellens, is always telling us we need to tell the story because it's a great story.
It is.
So about...
she's a great president.
Isn't she amazing?
I love her.
You know, she has coined the phrase, the gold standard in the silver state. And I love that.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to be.
Yep.
And so when I talk about the social work program, it's a rigorous process to become a social worker. You cannot call yourself a social worker in the state of Nevada without being licensed.
Okay.
And so it is a rigorous process, and it's not an easy thing to do. However, it's an awesome thing to do.
Okay.
And I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, I was telling you the story.
Yes.
Sorry, okay. So the story of the social work program, we were approached, Great Basin College was approached by University of Nevada, Reno, about 16 years ago, and basically they said, look, we don't have enough social workers in rural Nevada.
Okay.
There is a dearth, and there is a great need for mental health professionals in rural Nevada. There is still a great need for mental health professionals in rural Nevada. And so they asked if they could help us put together a program where students would do the majority of their educational process in their backyard. And so that's why we do this. One of the things that happens their senior year in this program, they do an internship or practicum where they go into community organizations, agencies, and other areas. Legal professionals, medical professionals who use social workers can utilize this service. And we have interns who go in and they learn hands-on how to be a social worker. So this is one of their senior level classes that they take.
And that's how social work is expanding across Nevada?
Well, that is the hope. And so this program, it's basically a degree out of University of Nevada, Reno.
Okay.
So it's unique to Great Basin College in that right now, this is the only degree plan that is a degree out of a university rather than a community college. However, you pay community college tuition for the first 3 years.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. And you know what? A lot of my students are returning students. I have students right now that are young mommies. I tell them every day their kids are training them better. They're doing the lab work as parents. And I get young dads too. I have some wonderful men that are in my program right now. And they're doing the lab work as parents, or I have a bartender. A bartender is in my program right now, and she's in her 60s.
Wow.
And she said, you know, I've loved doing this, but I've been on my feet a lot, and I want to be able to sit down and still listen to people's problems. So she's now doing the paperwork. She did the lab work and all of these wonderful life experiences. Coming to college, getting an education is doing the paperwork. And my own personal experience, I found it such a joy. And I tell, especially my young parents, I tell them every day, your family should be first. Yeah. That is your priority in your life. And one of the big problems that we have in the social work profession is that we forget to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah, that's always.
It happens to a lot of people in helping professions, right? We forget to take care of ourselves. So I tell my students, your families come first. You take care of them first. Let your studies be your me time. That's what I figured out for myself. Now, not a real good secret is that I was diagnosed with ADHD.
Oh, okay.
And I have found that my diagnosis actually is empowering to me because people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they like to hyper-focus on one thing and really focus on it. And so when I was raising my family, my studies became my me time. And so that's what I tell my students to do as well. A lot. And with this not disability, but with this special ability of being ADHD, I found that I was an audio learner So I would read into a textbook, I would read into a tape recorder from my textbook, and that's how I learned. That's how I learn information, is by listening rather than by reading.
Okay. So you read into it and then just play it back.
Yeah, so that's one of the first things I do with my Social Work 101 class is I talk to the students and ask them what kind of a learner they are, and let's figure that out from the beginning. And if you're more of a visual learner, then maybe you'll watch the videos more in my classes. Yep. If you're an audio learner like me, maybe you'll read into a recording device and then listen to your textbook back. Or maybe you need to interact with other individuals to learn. And so then we have group study sessions and that kind of thing.
And there's so many different ways that we learn. And
Absolutely.
like you said, find the one that works best for you and use it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can't beat that. Okay. Now, what kind of people make the best social workers?
Well, all kinds. Every
well,
kind
you
of
talked
person.
about the bartender.
Yeah, really. But typically my students are people that care. They want to make a living and a difference at the same time. And they can do that as a social worker. My LCSW supervisor, when I decided to take this job with Great Basin College, I asked her, I said, for a lot of social workers, it can be difficult to make a living. And she said, you tell your students I make well over $100,000 a year as a social worker.
Okay.
So if you are good at it, if you're an expert like you are, once you're done with 3,000 supervision hours, you are, then people will come to you. And you will be perceived as an expert by the legal community, by the medical community. It is a profession that is recognized. And it's valued among other professionals. I know my husband, I told you my husband's a physician.
Yes.
Boy, does he appreciate social workers. And I'm sure I've helped him appreciate. And we also have a daughter who is an LCSW social worker that works with hospice care. And it is a valued position to be a social worker. And it's respected, but it isn't easy. It's a rigorous training process. And so the kind of person that becomes a good social worker is someone who's determined.
Okay.
Maybe they've been called stubborn in the past, but they're determined. They're people who really care about others and want to make a difference. They are people who understand that being a social worker is more about giving others a safe place to figure out their own solutions rather than someone who's there to advise.
Okay.
And we do advise sometimes, but for the most part, we just provide an area of safety. And typically, people who come to social workers are at a point of crisis in their life. There's been some kind of a trauma, and you don't call a social worker unless there's a problem. And so
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so we are problem solvers.
Okay.
And I've worked with a lot of different social workers. I've worked in a lot of different areas of social work, and it's basically about being on the front lines. Your fire chief probably would have made a great social worker, because being on the front lines when there is a crisis and someone who can keep their cool, that's who we are.
Absolutely, you need that. Now, I wanted to ask about license and also about the letters after your name. Now, I see that you mentioned
LCSW is a licensed clinical social worker.
Okay.
And this is someone who does those first 4 years, gets a bachelor's degree, goes on and gets a master's degree, and then does 3,000 hours of supervision. They have to be, and this is what's interesting, 1,000 of those hours is for your paperwork.
Okay.
2,000 of those hours has to be in face-to-face time with clients. This is what's crazy. For every client you spend an hour with, you spend 2 hours doing paperwork. So, well, you start out that way. You learn techniques. I am a whiz at my speech-to-text app on my smartphone.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of my note-taking that way. But yeah, it is definitely a rigorous process. A BSW is a Bachelor of Social Work.
Right.
And you can work in Child Protective Services with that degree plan. You can also work in the schools as a safe school professional in the state of Nevada with that. But if you do go on one more year, and that is entirely online, The MSW program through UNR is completely online. So if you go one more year, then you can get a master's level degree, and then you do the supervision, the 3,000 hours of supervision, which typically takes about 2 more years. And you know, doctors do an internship. It's a similar type of thing. And anyway, so that is what allows you to basically hang out your shingle and be a therapist
Now,
or
on the,
family counselor.
on the license itself, once you're licensed in the state of Nevada, how long is the license good for?
The license, you have to relicense every 2 years. You have to take your CE, your community continuing education classes.
Yes.
We're going to talk about community education in a minute.
Yes, okay.
Continuing, you have to take, I think it's 30 continuing education classes that you have to take.
CEUs.
Okay. And so you have to, you know, reestablish that license every 2 years. And there is an exam that you have to take to be able to get that license in the first place.
Okay.
And then you just, you know, recertify every couple of years. There was, for a while, we were doing the suicide prevention training every year, and now they've backed it off to it's every 2 years again. And the suicide rates have actually gone down in the state of Nevada, and I believe a lot of that has to do with the social workers that are out there really making a difference in helping.
Because we have so many veterans that are committing suicide, and that rate is pretty stable, about 22 a day, and across the country. So we definitely need more social work in that, and I know the VA is working on it.
They are.
When you talk about suicide rates, those are the worst ever.
We have a wonderful Veterans Association program at Great Basin College as well. And if there's veterans out there that are in crisis, that is a great way to get some help and get pointed into a good direction.
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of vets. I value them so much. I appreciate their sacrifice.
Well, I know that all the people that you work with value you and value what you're doing and value what social workers are doing. So, but we have another session coming up, and we're going to be talking about a lot of training and a lot of programs that you have. All through Great Basin College, or?
Yeah, we'll be talking about the community education classes that I'm going to be offering this spring, and these are for anybody. You don't have to decide you want to go to social work and pay college tuition. You can just come take a community education class.
Come back and join us in the last session.